It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty.
Something changed at Balmoral, not the stone walls or the Highland air. It was not even the sweeping Scottish grounds that have held royal secrets for over a century. What changed was who is now in charge of all of it. Prince William has made a move, a quiet one. The kind that doesn't come with a press release or a palace statement. The kind that only happens when something has pushed a future king far enough. And at the center of it all is a child, Camilla's grandchild. A little one who didn't ask to be born into this storm, but here we are. Because inside the royal family right now, nothing about this is small. The castle that built a king. There is a place in Scotland that the British royal family has guarded more closely than almost any palace in London. There were no public tours, open gates, or camera crews wandering the corridors, just land, thousands of acres of it, mist rolling over the Cairngorms, deer moving through the trees at dawn, a river that has run cold and quiet through it all for centuries. That place is Balmoral, and for the royal family, it has never just been a castle. It has never just been a summer retreat or a Highland escape. It is something far more personal than that. Something that sits closer to the bone. Balmoral is where they go when the world gets too loud. It is where Queen Elizabeth spent her final weeks, where she drew her last breath in September 2022. It is where the family gathered not as public figures, but as people, grieving, quiet, human. It is where generations of royals have walked the same grounds, fished the same river, breathed the same sharp Scottish air, where the weight of the crown is briefly set down and something more honest takes its place. That is what this estate means. So, when a future king moves to take control of it, you do not ask whether it matters. You ask why, and you ask why now. Balmoral has been in royal hands since 1852. That was when Prince Albert purchased the estate for Queen Victoria. He had it rebuilt, expanded, transformed into the Scottish baronial castle that still stands today. Victoria loved it completely. She called it her dear paradise. After Albert died, she retreated there more and more. It became a place of mourning that slowly became a place of restoration. That pattern never really stopped. Every monarch since has carried on the tradition. Summers at Balmoral, long walks, family dinners without staff hovering at every corner, a rare kind of privacy that the royals almost never get anywhere else. For the late queen, it was perhaps the most beloved place on earth. She would arrive in summer and the whole tempo of the royal year would shift. Less formality and performance, more of whatever the family actually was beneath the titles and the protocol. She passed that love down, and William absorbed it deeply.
Giles has been killed in a car accident, and that her partner...
He has spoken about Balmoral with a warmth he rarely shows in public. As a boy, he ran those grounds with Harry. They fished and hiked. They had the kind of childhood moments there that royal children almost never get to have. When his mother Diana died in August 1997, it was to Balmoral that the family retreated. William was just 15 years old. He stood outside that castle and shook hands with members of the public while the whole world watched and wondered how a boy that young could hold himself together like that. Balmoral saw all of it, the grief and the growing up, the quiet transformation from a boy into someone who understood exactly what his life was going to require of him. So let's talk about what ownership of Balmoral actually means, because this is where the story gets important. Balmoral is not a crown estate. That is the first thing to understand. It is privately owned. It was passed from the late Queen to King Charles upon her death. It sits outside the formal structures of royal property that belong to the institution. That makes it personal and a choice. When Charles inherited it, he inherited not just the land and the castle, but the emotional architecture of everything that a state represents, the history and the tradition. The unspoken agreement that Balmoral belongs to the monarchy at its most private. And now, William is moving into that space, not as a visitor, or as a son spending a summer holiday. As someone with a level of control that signals something much larger than a property arrangement. Within royal circles, a shift like this does not happen quietly unless something has made it necessary. Decisions about estates like Balmoral are not made casually. They are not made because of paperwork or convenience. They are made because something happened, something that made William feel that the future of this place needed to be in his hands. And what triggered that feeling leads us directly to a name that has been circling palace conversations for months now. A child, young, innocent, entirely unaware of the storm gathering around them, Camilla's grandchild, and the fury that their growing visibility has apparently lit inside the walls of the firm. That story starts next, and it is not simple. Camilla's grandchild steps into the light. There is an unwritten rule inside the British royal family. It has never been published in any official document. No palace aide has ever stood at a podium and announced it, but everyone who moves within those circles understands it completely. You do not put the wrong people in the frame. The frame meaning the public image, the carefully managed narrative of what the monarchy is and who belongs at its center. Every photo call, public appearance, and name that gets attached to a royal story, all of it is deliberate. All of it is considered. Nothing happens by accident, which is exactly why what has been unfolding around Camilla's grandchildren has started to feel, to certain people inside the firm, very much like something that was allowed to happen on purpose. And that feeling has consequences. First, some context. Because Camilla's family story is one that the British public has never fully been given in one clean narrative. Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Camilla, has 2 children from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, her son Tom Parker Bowles, and her daughter Laura Lopes. Both are adults. Both have built their own lives largely outside the royal spotlight. Neither holds a royal title or is a working royal. That was always understood to be the arrangement. When Camilla married King Charles in April 2005, the palace was careful about how her family was positioned. The wounds from Diana were still raw. Public opinion toward Camilla was complicated, to put it gently. The last thing the institution needed was her children being pushed into the foreground. So they were kept at a respectful distance from the center of the royal image, visible enough at major events, absent enough to avoid controversy. It was a balance, and for years it held. Laura Lopes is Camilla's daughter. She is married to Harry Lopes, a former model turned businessman. Together they have 3 children, twin girls named Eliza and Lola, born in 2008, and a son named Gus, born in 2009. These are Camilla's grandchildren. They have appeared at royal events before. Weddings, jubilees, the kind of grand occasions where extended family fills the frame, and nobody looks too closely at who is standing where. But something has been shifting. The appearances have become more frequent. The proximity to the center of the image has become more deliberate. And the coverage that follows has started to frame these children not simply as extended family at a celebration, but as something closer to junior members of the royal picture. That is a different thing entirely. And inside certain quarters of the royal family, it has not gone unnoticed. Now here's the question worth sitting with for a moment. Why would this matter enough to cause fury? Because on the surface, a grandmother wanting her grandchildren visible at royal occasions sounds completely human. It sounds like something you could not reasonably object to. A woman proud of her family. Children attending events with their grandmother who happens to be the queen. What is wrong with that? The answer lies not in the sentiment. The sentiment is understandable. It lies in the positioning and in the timing, and in what the positioning communicates to an institution that runs entirely on symbols. The royal family is not a family in the ordinary sense. It is a brand. It is a constitutional structure. It is a carefully maintained image that must, above all else, tell a coherent story about who the monarchy is and where it is going. Every face in that story carries meaning, and the faces that appear repeatedly, that get placed near the center and begin to accumulate coverage and familiarity, those faces are making an argument without saying a single word. The argument is, we belong here. Sources close to the situation have described a growing unease among those aligned with William and Catherine's vision of the monarchy's future. The concern is not personal. At least that is how it has been framed internally. The concern is structural. William has spent years quietly and deliberately building a very specific image of what the next chapter of the monarchy looks like. Himself, Catherine, their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. A clean, forward-facing family unit that the public can invest in emotionally and constitutionally. That image requires clarity. It requires that the frame does not become crowded with figures whose connection to the succession is distant at best. It requires that the public eye stays trained on the line that matters. And when Camilla's grandchildren begin appearing with increasing regularity in spaces and stories adjacent to that line, it creates noise. Noise that William, by all accounts, has very little patience for. There is another layer here that cannot be ignored. Camilla's path to queen consort was never a smooth one. It was decades long and painful. It was contested by a significant portion of the British public who never forgave her for what they saw as her role in the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. William was Diana's son. He watched his mother suffer. He attended her funeral at 13 years old. He has carried that with him every single day of his adult life. His acceptance of Camilla has always been described as measured, respectful in public, complicated in private. That context does not disappear simply because time has passed. It does not disappear because Charles and Camilla are now king and queen. It lives underneath every interaction, every negotiation, every moment where William has to decide how much space he is willing to give the woman his father chose over his mother. So, when it begins to feel like Camilla's family is gradually, quietly expanding its footprint within the royal image, that history gets loud again. And a man who has spent his entire life preparing to be king does not ignore loud signals. He responds to them. The question is how. The answer, it turns out, involves a castle in Scotland, and a decision that nobody saw coming quite as clearly as it arrived. The fury behind closed doors. There is a version of the royal family that the public sees. Coordinated outfits at Trooping the Color, warm smiles on hospital visits, carefully worded statements released through palace communications teams at carefully chosen moments. That version is real, but it is curated. Behind it is another version entirely. One that does not make it into the press releases, one that moves through private phone calls and closed-door meetings and conversations that never get minuted. That is where the real business of the monarchy happens. And right now, in that hidden version, something is burning. Let's open the first thread here, because there are actually two separate sources of tension feeding this moment, and understanding both of them is the only way to understand why William's response has been as decisive as it has. The first is the Balmoral question. We will come back to that fully in the video. Keep on watching. The second is something more personal, more raw, and considerably older than any property dispute. Those familiar with the inner dynamics of the royal household have described the atmosphere in recent months as unusually tense. That word keeps coming up. Tense, not explosive, not openly hostile. The British royal family does not do open hostility. That is not how they operate. They do cold. They do distant. They do the quietly withdrawn phone call and the suddenly unavailable diary. And by all accounts, William's diary has become very selectively unavailable to certain conversations. The specific trigger point traces back to a series of events that, taken individually, might each have been manageable. But stacked together, they created something that could not be quietly absorbed. It started with appearances. Royal watchers began noting in late 2023 and through 2024 that Camilla's grandchildren were appearing in an increasingly prominent way in royal-adjacent coverage. Not just attending events, being featured and named, being given the kind of editorial attention that, in the royal media ecosystem, does not happen without some degree of cooperation from someone close to the family. That cooperation did not appear to be coming from William's side, which raised an obvious question inside the firm. Whose door were the journalists knocking on? The fury, as multiple sources have framed it, was not a single eruption. It was an accumulation. William has always been described by those who know him well as a man who processes privately and acts deliberately. He does not fire off reactions or make scenes. What he does is watch, assess, and then, when he has seen enough, he moves with a precision that tends to catch people off guard. Those around him say that by early 2025, he had seen enough. The specific flashpoint that appears to have accelerated his response involved coverage that placed Camilla's grandchildren in a context that felt, to William's circle, uncomfortably close to the kind of positioning reserved for working royals. Not a photo at a wedding, not a family portrait at a jubilee. Something more deliberate than that. Something that felt like the beginning of a narrative being constructed. And narratives, once they begin, are very difficult to dismantle. Now, here is the second thread, the one that connects directly to Balmoral. Within the royal family's private world, estates like Balmoral carry a specific kind of authority. Whoever controls access to those spaces controls something intangible but enormously powerful. They control the setting of the family story. Balmoral is where the royals are photographed informally, where the images of togetherness and tradition are generated. And the monarchy reminds the public and itself of its own continuity. If Camilla's family begins appearing regularly in that setting, in those photographs, against that backdrop, the narrative writes itself. And it writes itself in a direction that William has clearly decided he is not willing to accept. The battle is not really about a castle. It is about who controls the image of the British monarchy going forward. People close to William have been careful about how they characterize his emotional state. The word anger comes up, but so does something more considered than anger: determination. There is a difference between a man reacting and a man deciding. By all indications, William has moved from one to the other. He is not lashing out or making noise. He is doing something far more effective. He is acting. And what that action looks like, what taking control of Balmoral actually means in practice, and what message it sends to every single person inside that family who has been watching. That is exactly where we are going next. William makes his move. When a future king decides to act, he does not announce it. He does not hold a press conference. He does not release a statement through a palace communications team. He does not give an interview where he carefully explains his reasonings to a sympathetic journalist. He simply moves, and the people paying attention notice. The people who are not paying close enough attention find out later, when the position has already shifted and there is very little left to negotiate. That is precisely what happened here. William made his move, and by the time the full shape of it became visible, the message it carried was already impossible to misread. Let us talk about what taking control of Balmoral actually looks like in practice. Because this is where the story stops being symbolic and starts being structural. Balmoral, as we established, is privately owned. It passed from Queen Elizabeth to King Charles upon her death in September 2022. As a private estate, it sits outside the formal crown property arrangements. Charles owns it personally, which means decisions about how it is managed, who has access to it, and how it is positioned within the family's broader life are his to make. But here is the thing about King Charles right now. His health has been a matter of public record and public concern since early 2024 when his cancer diagnosis was confirmed. He has continued working, and he has maintained his public duties with a consistency that has drawn genuine admiration. But the reality of his condition has quietly and inevitably shifted certain conversations within the firm. Conversations about what comes next, conversations about transition, about continuity, about who is already beginning to carry more of the weight. And in that context, a request from William regarding Balmoral is not a demand from a subordinate. It is a signal from the man who will one day be king. A signal that he is already thinking about how the pieces of this institution should be arranged under his watch. Charles, by most accounts, has not been in a position to resist that signal, nor, some suggest, has he wanted to. So, what does William's control over Balmoral mean in concrete terms? It means oversight of the estate's management and operations, and influence over who is invited, when, and in what capacity. It means that the question of which family members appear at Balmoral and how regularly and in what context now passes through William's purview in a way it simply did not before. That last point is the one that matters most. Remember the battle for control of the royal narrative. The question of whose family occupies the frame of the monarchy's most private and most symbolically loaded spaces. This is William's answer to that question, not a conversation or a negotiation. A structural repositioning that makes certain outcomes simply much harder to engineer without his knowledge or agreement. It is, in the language of the institution, extraordinarily elegant, and in the language of the real world, it is a boundary being drawn with a very firm hand. Now, let us talk about what this communicates to Camilla specifically, because that dimension of this story has been carefully danced around in most of the coverage, but it deserves to be looked at directly. Camilla has worked harder than almost any figure in the modern royal family to rehabilitate her public image. The journey from the most despised woman in Britain, which is genuinely how she was characterized in significant sections of the press through the 1990s and early 2000s, to queen consort, is one of the most remarkable image transformations in recent royal history. She did it through patience, through consistency, through a carefully maintained public persona of warmth, dry wit, and quiet dedication. She kept her head down when she needed to. She stepped forward when the moment was right. She earned incrementally and painstakingly a level of public acceptance that once seemed completely unthinkable. And she built, or appeared to build, a functional relationship with William. Functional is the operative word, because those who watch these dynamics closely have always maintained that the relationship between William and Camilla is one of managed civility rather than genuine warmth. Respectful in the ways that matter publicly, careful in the ways that matter privately. The kind of relationship that works perfectly well as long as nobody pushes too hard in the wrong direction. Somebody pushed. And William's response is telling Camilla in the clearest possible language available to a man in his position that there are limits, that the space she and her family occupy within the monarchy has edges, and that those edges are now being defined by someone with the authority and the intention to define them. Earlier we asked who was giving journalists access, whose door were they knocking on, when coverage of Camilla's grandchildren began appearing in increasingly prominent ways. William's move on Balmoral answers that question indirectly but unmistakably. By taking structural control of the estate, he removes one of the key settings where that kind of informal access can be cultivated, where relationships between royal-adjacent family members and media figures are built over long Scottish summers and relaxed weekend gatherings. He is not just drawing a line around the property, he is drawing a line around the story. There is one more dimension here that has not been widely discussed, and it concerns George. Prince George is 12 years old. He is the direct heir to his father's throne. And William has been extraordinarily deliberate, some would say fierce, about protecting the environment into which George is growing up. The decisions William is making right now are not only about the present moment, they are about the institution that George will one day inherit, about the shape of the family narrative that will surround George as he moves into greater public visibility over the coming years. William does not want George's story cluttered. He does not want the line of succession complicated in the public imagination by a parallel narrative of another family quietly accumulating royal adjacency and the visibility that comes with it. Balmoral is where the royals go to be a family. William is ensuring that when the cameras eventually catch that family against that backdrop, the picture tells the story he intends it to tell. George at the center, the line is clear. The future is unambiguous. This was never really about a property dispute or a grandchild's appearances at royal events. It was about who controls the monarchy's story, and William has decided, firmly and structurally, that the answer to that question is him. But decisions of this magnitude do not land quietly. They send shockwaves through a family that was already navigating more fracture lines than it ever shows publicly. The fallout has begun. The realignment of relationships inside the firm is already underway, and where it leaves Camilla, where it leaves Charles, and what it means for the monarchy William will one day lead is what we're about to look at. And it does not end where you might expect. What happens next? Every institution has a moment where the old order and the new order exist simultaneously, where the person who currently holds power and the person who is about to hold power are both in the room at the same time. Both are aware of what is happening, both pushing through it with whatever tools they have available. The British monarchy is in that moment right now, and Balmoral has become its most visible pressure point. Let us start with Charles, because his position in this story is the one that gets the least attention and carries arguably the most complexity. Charles waited decades to be king, longer than any heir in British history. He watched his mother reign with a steadiness and a public devotion that cast an almost impossible shadow. He shaped himself, his causes, his public identity through all of those waiting years. And then the crown finally came. In circumstances no child wishes for a parent, he has been king for less than 3 years. He is experiencing a serious illness. He is managing an institution that is under more scrutiny than it has been in a generation. He is doing all of this while the son he is raising toward the throne is already, quietly and unmistakably, beginning to act like a king. That dynamic is not simple. Fathers and sons rarely are. Fathers and sons inside the British monarchy almost never are. Charles knows what William is doing at Balmoral. He has not moved to stop it. Whether that is because he agrees with it, because he lacks the energy to contest it, or because he understands that this transition is simply inevitable, the result is the same. He has stepped back. And in the language of this institution, stepping back is everything. Now, let us talk about Camilla, because this is where the story gets quietly devastating. She has spent 20 years building something inside this family. Not just a marriage, a position, a legitimacy, a sense that her place at the center of the monarchy is secure and earned and permanent. William's move does not destroy that, but it complicates it in ways that will take years to fully play out. Earlier, we asked what happens when somebody pushes too hard in the wrong direction with William. We said there were limits. We said those limits were now being defined. This is what those limits look like in practice. Camilla retains her title, role, and position beside Charles for as long as Charles is king. But the space available to her family, specifically the space that Balmoral represents, that space has contracted. The informal gatherings, relaxed summer access, and quiet cultivation of a broader family presence within the monarchy's most private setting, all of that now runs through William. And William has made his position clear. He is not hostile or cruel. He is simply precise. Her grandchildren are her grandchildren. They are not junior royals. They are not working members of the firm. And the settings and stories that belong to that world will reflect that reality going forward. For a woman who fought as hard and as long as Camilla did to belong inside this institution, that boundary lands with a particular weight. There is a generation watching all of this that rarely gets mentioned in these conversations. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. Camilla's children, parents of the grandchildren at the center of this storm. They did not ask for any of this. They did not engineer the coverage that caused the tension. They have spent their adult lives trying to exist in the extraordinary awkward space of being connected to the monarchy without being of it. They are now caught in the middle of a dispute that will shape how their own children experience their relationship to the royal family going forward. That is not a small thing. Those children, Eliza, Lola, and Gus, are teenagers now, old enough to understand something of what surrounds them. Young enough that the way adults experience this moment will leave a mark. How Camilla handles the next phase of this. How she manages the relationship between her instinct as a grandmother and her responsibilities as queen consort will define something important about who she actually is beneath the carefully constructed public image. That is the real test, and it is only just beginning, not just what happened at Balmoral, but what it reveals about the monarchy that is coming. William is 30-something years old. He has watched this institution fracture publicly over Harry and Meghan. He has watched his father's health change the tempo of the transition. He has watched the debate about the monarchy's relevance sharpen in ways that demand a response. He has drawn his conclusions. The monarchy survives, in his view, through clarity, through a clean and legible story about who the institution is, who leads it, and where it is going, through the ruthless management of the frame. Everything else is noise. And William has zero tolerance for noise. That is the king who is coming, not a distant figure in ceremonial robes performing ancient rituals for cameras, a man who moves deliberately and early, who uses structural levers rather than emotional confrontations, who draws lines not with words, but with actions that make the lines permanent. Balmoral is one of those actions. It will not be the last. Here's what we know for certain, as this story continues to develop. The monarchy is in transition, not just because Charles is ill, though that is part of it, but because the gravitational center of the institution has already begun to shift. William is not waiting for the crown to act like someone who understands what he is inheriting. He is already shaping it. And the people inside that family who have not yet fully reckoned with that reality are about to feel the edges of it in ways both large and small. Through property decisions and access conversations and the quiet but unmistakable management of who appears in which frame and when. Camilla built her place in this monarchy brick by brick over 2 decades. William is reminding everyone, including her, that the architecture of the next chapter belongs to him. The castle stands. The highlands are quiet. But inside the firm, nothing is quiet at all. Balmoral has stood for over a century and a half. It has absorbed coronations and funerals, love stories and betrayals, the quiet collapse of marriages and the loud reinvention of reputations. It has seen all of it. But what it is witnessing right now may be the most significant shift of all. Not a death or a scandal. A son stepping forward before anyone formally asked him to. drawing lines that will define the monarchy for the next generation, making it clear, without a single public word, exactly who is in charge of what comes next. William has moved. The question now is who moves in response. If this story has you thinking, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. This is only the beginning.